Most people think they're talking to God, but the truth is, they've never actually had a conversation. They speak, they ask, they repeat prayers they've memorized, and then silence. No response, no clarity, no direction. So they assume one of two things. Either God isn't listening, or they're doing something wrong. But here's what most people never realize. The problem isn't that God isn't speaking. The problem is, you've been taught how to talk to God, not how to talk with Him. And those are not the same thing. One is a monologue, the other is a relationship. Stay with me, because once you understand this, your entire spiritual life will shift. Let's start with the first truth. Number one, talking to God is asking. Talking with God is listening. Most prayers sound like a list. God, help me. God, give me this. God, fix that. And there's nothing wrong with asking. But here's the deeper truth. If your entire relationship with God is built on requests, you're not building connection. You're building dependency without intimacy. The Bible says, be still and know that I am God. Be still, not speak more, not explain more, not convince more. Be still. Because God's voice is not loud like the world. It doesn't compete with noise. It speaks in clarity, not chaos. But here's the shift most people miss. You cannot hear God if you never stop talking. Think about that. If every conversation you had with a person was just you speaking, would you call that a relationship? Or would you call that control? Talking with God begins the moment you create space for Him to respond. And His response doesn't always sound like a voice. Sometimes it feels like peace. Sometimes it shows up as clarity. Sometimes it's a thought that won't leave you alone. That's not coincidence. That's communication. Number two, talking to God is emotional. Talking with God is relational. Most people only pray when they feel something. When they're scared. When they're lost. When they're desperate. And again, that's human. But here's the pattern. When emotions rise, they pray. When emotions fade, they disappear. That's not relationship. That's reaction. But the Bible shows something different. Pray without ceasing. Not when you feel like it. Not when things go wrong. Without ceasing. Why? Because talking with God is not an event. It's a state. It's awareness. It's walking through your day with Him, not just reporting to Him. Here's what changes everything. You stop treating God like a last resort and start walking with Him like a constant presence. That means you don't just pray when life breaks. You talk when life is normal. You don't just ask for answers. You share your thoughts. You don't just seek help. You build connection. And suddenly, God is no longer distant. He's involved. But here's what most people never realize. Number three, talking to God is controlled. Talking with God requires surrender. When people pray, they often already know what they want. They're not seeking direction. They're seeking confirmation. God, bless this decision. God, make this work. God, open this door. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You can't hear God clearly if you've already decided what He's supposed to say. That's not listening. That's filtering. The Bible says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Not lean less, not balance both, lean not, because real communication with God requires one thing most people resist. Letting go of control. Talking with God means you're open to being redirected. It means you're willing to hear no. It means you're ready for answers that don't match your expectations. And that's where most people disconnect. Because they don't want guidance, they want agreement. But God doesn't exist to validate your plans. He exists to lead your life. Number four, talking to God is words. Talking with God is alignment. This is where it gets deeper, because God doesn't just listen to what you say. He responds to how you live. The Bible says, if I had cherished sin in my heart, the Lord would not have listened. That's strong, because it reveals something most people ignore. Communication with God is not just verbal, it's behavioral. You cannot live in contradiction and expect clarity. You cannot ignore conviction and expect direction. You cannot ask for guidance while resisting obedience. Talking with God means your life is aligned with what you're asking for. Because obedience is a language, and God responds to it. But here's what most people miss. God often answers after alignment, not before it. You want clarity, God is waiting for movement. You want confirmation, God is waiting for obedience. Just like Peter stepping out of the boat. The water didn't hold him until he moved. Now let's go deeper, because this is the part that changes everything. Number five, talking to God is occasional. Talking with God becomes identity. At some point, this stops being something you do and becomes who you are. You don't go pray. You live aware. You don't seek God. You walk with Him. You start noticing things differently. Peace becomes a signal. Discomfort becomes direction. Repetition becomes confirmation. Just like the script patterns show. God repeats what matters until you respond, and suddenly, life stops feeling random. Because you realize something. God has been speaking the entire time. Through moments, patterns, people, convictions. You just weren't trained to listen. But here's the illusion that keeps most people stuck. Most people think talking with God requires perfection. But the truth is, it requires honesty. You don't need perfect words. You need real ones. You don't need religious language. You need sincerity. Look at the Psalms. David didn't filter his emotions. He questioned. He cried. He doubted. And God still called him a man after his own heart. Why? Because relationship is built on truth, not performance. So let's bring this together. Talking to God is asking, emotional, controlled, occasional, verbal. Talking with God is listening, relational, surrendered, constant, aligned, and once you shift from one to the other, everything changes. Your prayers feel different. Your decisions feel clearer. Your life feels directed, not random. Because here's the final truth. God doesn't want conversations where you speak at Him. He wants a relationship where you walk with Him. Just like the structure in these scripts shows. The deeper truth is always hidden beneath the surface behavior. Most people stay at the surface. Words, requests, routines, but the real connection, it's deeper, it's quieter, it's constant. So here's the question. And don't answer it quickly. Are you talking to God? Or are you actually walking with Him? If this opened your perspective even slightly, type "with" in the comments. Just that one word. Because that word means you're no longer just speaking. You're ready to listen.